Okay, guys, let me know if you can hear me. Awesome. All right, guys, let's do it. And hello, everybody. Welcome to LFL episode number 91. And yes, I'm wearing green so I don't get pinched. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. I hope you're doing well. And it looks like we've got all our regulars all showing up there in the house. Been watching the chat there. And yep, Warren, I'll have to work extra hard to earn it. So he gets one vote. That's the thumbs up. So smash that like button, or wait until I earn the like button. All right, so I hope you guys are all doing good. It's good to see Bruce is in the house. He's pouring green tea and green beer for everybody today. So get your orders in, and he will take care of you. So, oh yeah, speaking of color, I just thought something kind of amusing is I have been busy this week working on my book. So this is my drawing book. I don't know if you guys have seen this. I wrote it like 5 years ago or something. So I'm working on the new edition. And that's probably why I'm so tired. I don't know if any of you guys have worked on books, but yeah, they can be a little bit of a brain drain. So if my brain is a little lopsided, it's not because I'm celebrating St. Patrick's Day yet. It's because I'm writing a book. But speaking of books, I found this and I thought it was quite amusing. I don't know if you guys, how many of you remember this book that I did back in the day? This was a promo thing that the publisher did. But my favorite part here is, let me see if I'm trying to do it looking at the camera. Okay, go the other way. It's like trying to cut your own hair in a mirror. You guys have done that? Look at now in full color. It's over there somewhere. There we go. Now I'm in full color. So I don't know if you guys know like what we put into doing these books. So I don't know. I just figured it'd be kind of amusing. So this is my first book that I wrote. I mean, I did the new Masters of Photoshop, but this one here, this doorstop size book was all in black and white. That's how they did it back in the day. So I just thought it was kind of funny because I had to write a chapter on color imprinting and black and white, and I just want to read what I wrote here. Maybe you guys will find this amusing. It says, this is what I wrote. Where are we? Okay, here we go. All right, so we can go beyond a duotone and produce a tritone or a quadtone. They're exactly as they sound. Tritone is 3 channels, while quadtone is 4. Here I added another channel to produce a tritone. You can really see the difference this made to our humble grayscale image. So yeah, see the big difference that color made in black and white? Yeah, it was kind of interesting, back in the day, doing those books when they were black and white. I don't know. I just thought that was just kind of funny. So there we go. I shared that with you guys. Hopefully you found that somewhat amusing, and if not, hey, it was a waste of 3 minutes, but that's all right. So I thought today, let me go to the screen and I'm going to throw myself up over here. How are you guys? I hope you're all doing well. I thought for something just like completely different. I'm going to talk about preferences inside of Photoshop. And it looks like Robin here says, I remember doing duotones for print. Yes, indeed. And they still have their place for special effects. I don't know if you guys saw in my new course that I just put out on curves. I'm actually talking about duotones and quadtones, tritones. Back in the day, you used to do that to save money on printing because, process printing, which is, 4-color printing is another thing they called it, just like regular color printing like that. back in the day that was quite expensive. And to do a one color job, well, it kind of looked like a photocopy. It was a little hokey. So you would do a two color job, and it would be a lot less expensive, and you'd have to create the color plates. And sometimes you would just put, just a black and then another color over the top, or sometimes you would mix a couple of colors and do a tone. Usually, I remember, for a company I worked for, we did a color magazine, but then when we did other publications, we would do like envelopes and things like that, and stationery and not such exciting things, and we would print those in two color and do the duotone kind of thing. But these days it's actually cheaper to do four color printing because it's pretty much what everyone's set up to do. All right, let's look at some of these Monty Pythons, and now for something completely different. Right, there we go. So let's go under preferences. So I make sure Bruce screaming at me, show your screen. Nope. See, it's already embedded in my memory now, my subconscious. I hear Bruce screaming, show your screen. All right, so under the Mac, and this is something that's kind of interesting. So under the Mac, the preferences are under Photoshop preferences. I believe under Windows, they're under like edit preferences or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. About time, right? Here we go. All right, so we're going under the preferences here, and I'm just going to start on general. So for those of you who don't know, there's all kinds of things that you can turn on and off inside of Photoshop, or the way you can display different things. And what you see on the screen when you get it out of the box is not necessarily the way you have to have it look or the way it performs. And you can go into the preference. And the thing about preference is that you're going to go in and you're going to personalize these things to work the way you want them to work. So, you ever get sick of forever having to rasterize smart objects after you place something? You don't have to have it placed as a smart object, just for example. We'll get through some of this. And this will be fun, a complete unscripted general knowledge test of how well I know the preferences here inside of Photoshop. All right, so if we go on the left-hand side, we can see the different categories: general, interface, workspace, tools, history log, blah, blah, blah. And some of these are pretty self-explanatory, and some of them are not. Sometimes the preferences are where you expect them to be, and sometimes they're not. So we've got some interesting ones at the bottom. Let's just quickly get these newer ones out of the way. It's funny, I guess they're not in alphabetical order. I guess they just add them as they come up with new ones. No, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to smile or laugh. I got a comment on my latest YouTube video that my cheesy grin was inappropriate and not helping the learning experience. So I'm sorry I smiled or laughed. I should keep a straight face, because if I enjoy it, apparently it takes away from the learning experience. By the way, you guys should try doing YouTube. You gotta have thick skin for the comments. All right, so down the bottom here, product improvement. We'll just start with this one. The product improvement is, sends information to Adobe, basically. So when it does not track everything you do, but what it does is it just sends anonymous data, so they don't know who it is, but that's how they know what features people use more, and that actually helps Adobe quite a bit, actually, because it helps them figure out what areas they need to work on, as far as like when they do improvements or new features, like, hey, a lot of people are using this feature, this feature's not being used. So it kind of gives it a pecking order of how they do that. So it's useful for Adobe as far as that. And of course, marketing, so they know what to market to you. They'd be like, oh, everybody likes to color photos. So then they put a color photo thing in and say, hey, we've got a color photo thing in, and all the people are happy. All right, so technology previews. This is interesting. This is where Adobe puts in new features that are not quite ready for prime time, that are kind of testing them, so to speak. And these can be a public beta. So you can actually go in and you can sign up through your Creative Cloud account for a public beta, and you might get some more checkboxes than what I have here. I'm on another pre-release, but I am not showing that one, obviously. But this is, some different things. So let's talk about something that might be useful here. I'm kind of surprised that Enable Preserve Details 2.0 Upscale is still under a technology preview. What it does is when you're resizing images, because if we go under the, there's another setting under here somewhere where we get those. Let me find it. And we will, where are we here? I mean, we'll get to it eventually, but there's a preference here. We'll get to it. When we get to it, I'll show you. But there's a preference there where you choose the algorithm that you want to use for resizing. This one, for some reason, is still here. I wish this was, prime time, because this is the one you want to use. It's using AI, and it gives a much better result. I actually did a tutorial on that a while ago, comparing that. All right, and then, there's other things here. Deactivate native canvas. Now, this is useful if you're having problems with Photoshop and Photoshop is not working the way it should for you. This is a good option because the native canvas is just kind of like a compositing engine or how it works. And so, as they're updating it to use more of the GPU, different features kind of go in there. So you start to get some weird things. This is the one that used to be... we used to have another option that we used to turn on. It's gone now, but this is a good troubleshooting one. All right, color manage HDR, enable native canvas rulers. So the new rulers are native canvas. Let me show you what the native canvas is. Control R. Native canvas is just more responsive, GPU based. Basically, what you see on the screen here. So that's kind of the new one they're going to. It's it's going to be faster, it's going to be more precise, but when they do the changing, what can happen sometimes is older graphics cards can have issues with it, or sometimes just different configurations. So while they're trying to figure it out, it's kind of nice that you have the option to turn that on or off. So that would be there. Enhanced controls, touch bar, property adjustments. I guess this will probably go away one day because Apple's not really doing the touch bar anymore. So, interesting. All right, let's go to the top. Now, when it comes to preferences, some of these preferences, you need to restart Photoshop to see the difference, and some of them don't. Generally speaking, if you need to restart Photoshop, it's going to show you on there, hey, this one needs a restart, restart required, and you'll see that. Let me go down here. Change what, well, this one will happen right after the dialogue. So some of them say that, some of them say restart. So they're just kind of different. All right, so let's go in here. Color picker, Adobe or Apple. Now, obviously, if you're on Windows, it's going to be the Windows color picker. I don't know if you guys ever seen this, but if I choose Apple, this is kind of interesting. And when you click on here, you get this color picker. So you can actually use the color picker from your system here if you want. Personally, I prefer the Photoshop one. And there's Photoshop. Okay, so there's the about. Let's go back to preferences. All right, so that's a kind of interesting one. But then the HUD color pickers are interesting. So generally speaking, we're working on this hue small, and that is, when you're like, let me show you here. When you're picking a color, you hold down let's grab the brush. When you grab the brush, you hit the Alt or Option key. There's your kind of color picker. And we can grab this and we can, do that. So this can also be changed. Let's have a look here. Preferences, general. It's too bad I can't actually work on the screen at the same time. But we've got, just different ones on the HUD here. So we can change the size. We can go larger, smaller, all that kind of fun stuff. All right. Image interpolation. This is exactly what I was talking about here. When we did the technology previews and we have the details 2.0, which is still under technology previews. It's been in there for a long time. I hope that makes it in here, because image interpolation, this is where you choose how you're going to interpolate. What does that mean? That means when you resize your images, Photoshop has different ways of doing it. Bicubic automatic is the best one, essentially, because bicubic is more accurate. Nearest neighbor and bilinear work well when you're doing type or line art or different things like that. You're actually going to get a smoother result. That's where those come in. But then bicubic is the better one for working with photos and more high resolution images like that, more detailed gradients, different things like that. So then there's basically bicubic. Then when you want to go larger or smaller, it'll go between smoother or sharper. So that means, when you're enlarging something, you'll smooth it to try and get rid of the pixelization. When you're reducing, it adds a little sharpening to just kind of, so it doesn't get soft. So the automatic is just going to choose whichever one of these, whichever task you're performing is going to use the best one. Now, let me show you where that is. So when we go out an image and we do our image size, this is where these are. And there's the bicubic, blah, blah, blah. But notice that I've got it set to preserve details 2.0 because I've enabled that under the technology previews. So this is going to give you a much better resizing. So when you resize things up or you resize them down, you're going to get a better result. And also you have a little noise reduction slider that you can use to just kind of get rid of some of those artifacts. So that's one preference I would definitely change. So go into your enhanced controls, your technology previews, turn that on, and then use that. But unfortunately, under the general, we can't set that as the default here in the preferences. And the reason for that is just because it's still in beta. But when you turn it on there, as you can see under the image size, you can set it there. And then it will use that when you are working in Photoshop. So here's an interesting thing. So if I hit Control T, and let me just turn this on, and I hit Control T to resize this, notice interpolation. I can set it here. And unfortunately, that new one is not available in here yet. But that's also another place where you can choose that. And yeah, it'll make a difference. All right. Oh, while I'm here, here's another thing. When you're using the eyedroppers inside of Photoshop, when you want to sample things, whether you're in the brush tool or wherever you are, when I sample here, let me zoom all the way in. So let me get some, I'll show you something interesting here. Let me show you something interesting. Bruce, it's about time he did something interesting. Okay. So if you guys like this when I'm done, do me a favor, hit the like button. Oh, looks like we still got that weird color picker. Okay, that's fine. I guess I didn't put that back. So let's do a blue pixel. Let's do a orange pixel. Why don't we do another orange one here? So what I'm doing is I'm literally just going to paint a few colored pixels in here, just for fun. All right, so here's the thing. So if I'm in my brush tool here, and let's go, the brush is under the pencil. And there we go. Hit our brush tool, and then I go to sample something. Notice when I'm over this orange, notice it's sampling brown. Look at this. As I'm going over here, it's not sampling those individual pixels. Well, that's no good, is it? Well, why is that? Well, let me show you. If I go under the eyedropper, the sample size set to 5 by 5. If I set it to point sample, and now I go back to the brush, look at this. I can get the individual pixels. So if you need to do very, very accurate pixel sampling, what you got to do is set it to 1 by 1. But the problem with that is that when we are working with photographs, and you've got a little bit of noise, or you've got a little bit of grain, or you've got color noise, those individual pixels could be quite different. In fact, let's open up a photo here, and let's go all the way into 100%. Just double click the hand tool. Actually, I'm going to zoom in as far as I can. Okay, so look at this. So we've got some details here, right? So here's the thing. If I'm going in here and I'm wanting to sample this water, and I hit the Alt or the Option key, look at this. See how it changes dramatically? And in fact, if I zoom all the way out here, notice how that color is just constantly changing. So it's like really, really hard to sample the color I want because I'm looking for more of an average color. So when we go under the eyedropper tool here, when we change this to a 3 by 3 average, notice if I hold down the Alt or Option key, notice how it's only looking at the 3. So we get a little bit more. It's still changing, But what it's doing now is it's averaging the 3 pixels together to give me that color. So if I go away, 3 pixels away, look at this. I go 1, 2, 3, look at this, boom, up here. As long as I'm 3 pixels away now, it's got that color. But now it's going to sample the average. So when you're working with low resolution images, that can be good. Or we can go all the way up to 101. So this is not going to matter where I go. Look at this. Because this is looking at 101 pixels. So that's for extremely high resolution. So a lot of the time I'll work with a 5x5 or an 11x11, and look at this. As I'm going in this area now, it's maintaining that color. So that means, hey, if I want to sample the water, you know, see if we get a little bit of drift there, but not a ton, so I can get a more accurate sample. So you're going to be using those eyedroppers. You're going to find them everywhere. You'll find them in the levels dialog box. You'll find them in the curves dialog box. You'll find these eyedroppers all over Photoshop. And the only place you change the sample size, no matter where you are, is under the sampler here, eyedropper tool, sample size here. This is where it controls it everywhere. So even though we're doing preferences, I just showed you something that's not even in the preferences panel. So anyway, so I don't know, did you guys know that before? Or did you find that useful? That actually can solve a lot of problems. Not sexy, but I think that one's definitely worth a like. What do you guys think? So this is like one of those, we're at the gym today. We're not at the movies eating chips and, you know, drinking Coke and yahooing at Spider-Man or Batman or whoever it is. Right now we are in the gym, we're drinking pressed juice, and we are lifting weights. This is the kind of stuff that's not sexy in Photoshop. No one teaches it. No one does YouTube videos on it because it doesn't get a lot of views. But this is the stuff that's really going to help you with your Photoshop stuff. So are you guys okay with that? Are you ready for that? Or is St. Patrick's Day the day where we should have just been just goofing off and having a good time? I don't know. So anyway, let's continue here on some of this. Let's see what else we got. All right, so we've talked about the color picker. Let's put that back to Adobe. And if I click here, this should give me my normal color pickers again. There we go. Oh, by the way, while we're in these color pickers, why don't we talk about these for a second? Hey, why not? All right, so the color picker, when we're in here, I'm sure a lot of you know we can turn on web safe colors. That restricts it to 216 colors that are in the web safe color gamut. What does that mean? Is this obsolete? Does this mean anything? Actually, it does, because these are the common colors between Mac and Windows, and these are the common colors between the different color spaces. So even though you have access to way more colors, if you choose the colors within this panel and you work with those colors, they're the ones that are going to be reproduced the most accurately or the most consistently across different computers and different devices. I also find the web safe colors really useful just to get a consistent color, so I don't have to go into the color swatches and find it. So for example, I know there's certain colors I like. Like when I'm in the oranges here, I use this orange a lot, and I use this orange a lot. In fact, those two are two of the photoshopCAFE colors. And I can quickly get them just by going into that web space. I mean, I could go in here and I could estimate it, but, you know, try to get that exact shade of orange, not so easy. But when I go to the web space, it'll move it to that closest one. So I find that useful. The other place I find it useful too is when I want to grab a black here. Sometimes I want to work for 20% black, so it's easy to do it. Look at this, 100%, 80%, 60, 40, 20, and pure black. So you can use it very, very quickly to get these exact tones. So I do like to use that. The other thing that's useful too is instead of remembering the HSB, which is the hue, saturation, and brightness, if you notice that, let me turn the web space off now. When we're working inside the HSB, the hue, saturation, and brightness, hue is the color, saturation is the amount of it, and the brightness is how bright it is. So if I go from the bottom to the top and I push it all the way to the left, notice that the only thing changing is the brightness. That's the B. So going up and down will make a color brighter or darker. So let's go to the middle here. Now, if we go across, notice what it does is it changes the saturation. Left is black and white, no saturation. Right is 100% saturation. So notice there, bottom left is going to be 0. It's just black because there's no saturation and no brightness. Go to the very top up here, we get 100% saturation and brightness. So that's kind of how that works. Now what about the hue? Hue is the color. So if we move this slider, notice the only one that's going to change now is H, the hue slider. Okay, so we know we can find a color. If we go HSB, this will give us a color, but we get the equivalent in RGB, lab, and CMYK values in here, right? But sometimes the easy way to copy a color, rather than typing in, 233, 30, blah, 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 rather than doing that, just grab the hexadecimal value here. So it's 6 digits, and that describes a color. So that's a quick way to describe a color. However, if we use WebSafe, you'll notice that these belong to a certain library. Notice that those numbers are much more even and consistent. So these are the numbers in the WebSafe palette. But you can grab any number or any color as that. Okay, so let's talk about HSB. So we know we can change the hue, saturation, and brightness. Sometimes I like to go in here and just to change the brightness value. So you set on the B, and maybe I want to make something 20% bright. You can type that in. So that works very well for that. Okay, so we're just kind of, talking a little bit about the color. Now, if you ever go into your color picker and it looks weird like that, or it looks weird like that, just make sure you just hit the H for hue, and then this will give you your regular one. And by the way, if you want to shift this to the closest WebSafe color, just click on there, and that will shift that color. See that? Regular color, WebSafe, the closest one. All right, and now we have the other ability. We can create our swatches. So if you want to add that to a swatch, you just click and it'll add it to color swatch, which you'll find under your, right here. It'll add it to your library if you need it. And then the other one is color libraries. I'm just going to touch on this. Now, I went into a little bit more depth on this too in my curves course that I just released. And this is where you can get things like Pantone colors. So these come from the different color chips. If you guys ever seen the color chips, like Pantone chips. I don't know if I have one lying around here. Maybe I do. Let me have a look. Hang on. 1 second. Yeah, I've got them somewhere. But you've seen those swatches, right? Yeah, I think have you all seen the color swatches? I'm just looking over here to see if I can find a color swatch. This is kind of interesting. No, I can't find one right now. But if you guys are familiar with the color swatches, you get the little book there, and then you fan them out and you get the colors. So that's how you would actually pick a color. And the swatches, are printed to exact specifications. So you can find a color and say, hey, this is the color I want to use. And, it's a PMS, like maybe it's a PMS, we're in here, it could be a 501. Okay, so that, so then you type in that number. That's going to give you exactly that color. Let's go to Pantone color. These are the more common ones here. So we've got the coded and the uncoded. Solid coded, uncoded are probably your more popular ones. And then if you're working in process printing, you can go up to the CMYK coded and uncoded. These ones here you're going to use for printing, going to commercial printing press. You're working with an offset printer, magazines, books, posters, flyers, anything printed for color process. You're going to get exactly the color you want because you can dial it in. So find it on the color swatch, then dial it in here, and doesn't matter what it looks like on the screen, it's going to print exactly the same as that swatch. And then same here with the coded or uncoded. This is where you're using things like spot colors. So anyway, okay, so that's color. All right, let's move on. Let's see what else we can do. So hopefully this is adding some value to you guys, and we'll go through some things. Some of this is going to be more interesting to some people, and other parts are going to be interesting to other people. All right, so let's move on. So we've got things here we can do. Okay, so the home screen. Auto show the home screen. This is when I close everything out, watch this. Don't save. And then I get this big monstrosity. You can see my book. So I've been working on all the drone stuff, right? So you get this big monstrosity when you open it. If you don't want that to appear, then what we do is I'm just clicking on the Photoshop logo to go back into Photoshop. But if we go into the preference here, and this is one, I only have that. I'm actually starting to like it, believe it or not. I never used to like it. But if I turn this option off and I click OK, I've got no documents open. Let me just open a document, create a document, whatever. And then I close it. I just stay inside the Photoshop interface. So, that's one, That's how Photoshop used to work, and then we got this big thing which seemed like a banner ad. However, I do kind of like getting these thumbnail previews of my recent documents. I do find that kind of useful. So it's not like, I'm not hating on that anymore. But that's how you can turn that on or off. And here's another one on that line of things. Let's go back to our general here. Use legacy new document interface. Let me show you what that is. So when we create file new, we get this humongous new document interface, right? So you've seen this. We got the saved, we got, all kinds of things here. We got mobile film, we got templates, it's all in here. You got this big, huge thing. And back in the day, we had this other one, which a lot of people liked, the legacy new document interface. And we just choose file new. And remember, it was just simple like this. And if you want to get that back, that's how you do it. Just change that. However, I would say, give some of these a chance, because sometimes you might find you like some of those newer ones. Sometimes they're just a pain, I'll be honest with you. They're just annoying, and sometimes they're really useful. So depending on how you're working. Skip transform when placing. Okay, so this is, when we are placing some file new. And, I'll create a new doc. I'm not going to do that one because that's going to give me guides. Let me just go here. Here we go. I'll just zoom out. And then, hey, let's drop something in here and get this thing here, right? So you've got to place this, when we choose file, place, and we're going to do either embedded or we're going to do linked. If it's linked, that means if you change the original document, this will update. And then you drop it, and you've always got to do this. You've got to resize it, drop it in. So if we go in here, under the preferences, general, and we turn that off. Skip transform when placing. And then we choose file place. Let's place it embedded. Let's grab that one, and we drop it in there. Boom. See how it's just placed automatically? And now I don't have to do that every single time. So if you guys don't like having to resize those all the time, you can do that. Notice these are being placed as a smart object. You can see the smart object icon in there, which is nice because that means I can always resize these later if I want to. And because they're a smart object, it's not going to lose any quality. When will the drone book be out, Gary? I think they said it's going to be out like near the end of the year. That's all I know at the moment. We don't have an exact date yet because I haven't got everything in, but it'll be later on in the year. So print only, yes, that will be the print book. Okay, so let's go back to the preferences here. Yeah, so we can do that. So you have the ability to skip that if you want. And then the legacy free transform, well, you guys know what that is. Free transform is when I go here, I hit Control T, and see that's how all squishy like that. And I hold the Shift key, and that constrains it. That's how it always worked. That's the legacy way of working. However, they did change it where no hands, look. Now it's like this. So then Adobe changed it so when you do it like that and you want to constrain it, you hold down the Shift key, and that enables you to change the shape of it, which apparently is not even working. That's awesome. Yeah, so that's basically what that was. And you can change that preference just by clicking up here. So this will do the same thing. It will actually change it in the preference. If you hit Control T and you turn that off, it will be non-constrained. If you hit the link icon, it will change to constrained. And I'm sure if I go back in again and do it and hold the Shift key, I can warp it. Oh, that's interesting. That's definitely, there we go. Make sure it sticks. Hit Enter, Control T. Oh, interesting. It's not sticking. Okay, so that's broken. All right, but the good thing about that is we can change it under the preferences inside of Photoshop. So that's what that legacy free transform does. Beep when done. That means if you're applying filters or whatever, it will R2D to you when it's done. It'll go beep. Or actually, I've never done it. Let's find out. I've never, ever done the beep while done. Any of you guys ever done it? Let's try a filter. Let's do one that takes a while. Let's do the blur. Let's do the radial blur. Zoom 100% highest quality. Okay, listen.
Sorry, could you say that again? I'm having...
You're always having trouble there, Siri. All right. Oh, actually, I've turned the volume down for the live stream. That's why we're not hearing it, because I turned the volume down on my computer, because I don't want that to be feeding back with you guys and echoing. Okay, so anyway. But that's what the beep, when done, will make a noise. All right, so, you know, that was good back in the day when you resized or you saved an image and it took forever. So you could be making a coffee and then the computer would make a noise and you'd be like, all right, it's done. Let me go do the next thing. All right, so let's see what we've got here. So this is a smart object. So if I don't want this to be a smart object when I place it, I can turn that off and it will just put it in as a regular layer. And turn off resize. We'll put it in at 100% of its size. When I have the resize image, you notice that what it does is it makes it automatically fit that document when I placed it. That's what that resize does. So that's the difference between skip transform and resize. So resize image during placement will resize it to fit. If you turn that off, it'll just come in as original size, whatever that is. And the reason for having that on and the smart object is it just so you can find those handles. But let me show you, if I turn that off, another way to do that. So let's just choose File, Place. And I'll show you something interesting here that you may not know. So let's place embedded. Let's grab something here. I don't know how big this is going to be. Let me grab this one. All right, so notice that it's humongous. So by turning off that option to resize, it just brings it in at 100%. Now, I can't drag those corners to resize it now because they're off the screen because it's too big. So here's a tip. Control-0 will zoom out so you can see the handles. And now you're able to scale these down. So basically, you know, when you turn that resize in, it's just going to bring it in at that size to fit. So if you're doing a lot of placing with the documents, you could find those different preferences quite useful. By the way, you can reset your preferences on quit, which means that when I quit the preferences panel, it will reset all these preferences back to the factory ones. But let's not do that. I'm going to turn that one back on. And preset syncing. Use at your own peril. Preset syncing, what that does is it will sync all your, your presets. Let me just, things like gradients, color swatches, all these kinds of things. It will sync it across multiple computers because when you build these libraries, even though you're on a Creative Cloud, each computer has its own library. So if I create textures or brushes, they're only going to be in that computer. But if I turn that on, all your computers are going to sync with that, and then they're going to have the same brushes and things like that. I don't know if they fixed the issue with it. I tried it one time, and it just created a huge mess for me. So at this point, I don't use it. But I'm sure it's fixed. And someone else can better test that for me. Okay, so what have we got here? Colin, are you landscape mixture neural filter using the Adobe presets and dip blur? Hang on. There's a question here. Then we bring it over here. From PhotoMaker. Oh, thank you very much, Samad. Saving to different versions of Photoshop. Actually, there's no issues with that. Polka Dot Studio, I'll answer your question first because it's a very, very easy question. Yeah, there's no difference because what happens is when you save to Photoshop, it creates a composite file. And I will get back to the other question in just a moment. And let me show you. It's going to be under File Handling. So if we go under File Handling and we do the maximize compatibility. You don't have to even have some of these on, but yeah, so we got maximize compatibility. So what happens is when you save inside of Photoshop by default, it's going to save a composite image. So it creates all the layers. And by the way, it's just a zip file. So it has all the different layers in there. And then what it does is it will create a flattened JPEG version of that image with it. So that's when you see the previews. When you look in thumbnails and previews and different things like that, you see it. So what it will do is if you open it inside a earlier version of Photoshop that doesn't support some of the features, say for example smart objects or different things like that, when you have that compatibility on, what it's going to do is it's just going to put in a JPEG, a flattened JPEG, or a layer style. If it doesn't support that layer style, it'll put in a flattened JPEG version of it. So you're always going to be able to open that Photoshop document in a older version of Photoshop, and it will show the features it can, and it will flatten the features it can't. Future Photoshop documents are still going to have those same features, so you're going to be able to open, like something I created in Photoshop 6 or Photoshop 3, I can still open inside the latest version of Photoshop. So that's one of the nice things about the PSD format, and the way that works is we don't have compatibility issues like you would have with something like Premiere Pro or, even Lightroom, where you have to have the certain versions of those libraries. Although Lightroom kind of gets around that, lets you upgrade your library. But, some of the other applications, InDesign, for example, or even Flash, you couldn't necessarily open them in different versions. So, yeah, we don't have that problem in Photoshop. Okay, let's get back to the other question that was being asked here. And let me see if I can get this. Will the preference box stay the same? Yes, it's sticky, so remember whatever I do here. Okay, landscape mixer. Neural filter using the, yep. Depth blur, yep. Still working properly. Oh, mine stopped after the second release update of, I'm not aware of that. Last time I used it, it worked fine. If you have issues with those, you can click on the Creative Cloud here. And then what you can do is go under your photo here under Photoshop. And then you can click on Photoshop. Oh, it's Photoshop Mobile. Let me go to regular Photoshop. Where are you, regular Photoshop? Here we go, Photoshop Desktop. And then you can just, all apps, here we go. Photoshop, click on the little ellipses and you can do other versions. And then you can install a previous version where it was working. So that's kind of a way around that. All right, moving on. I'll look at another couple of questions in a sec, but let's just move on here. So we got other things, I'm going to zoom through these. Camera Raw preferences. These are the same preferences that you'll find under the Camera Raw plugin. So you can get there from Camera Raw as well, or you can do it here. So this will just link with that. Let's go and have a look at some things that just a little bit more interesting quickly. So we can change the color of our interface here by going through there. And of course, when we go through the different modes, like the F modes, for example, here, each time I hit the F key, and by the way, if you hit the space bar and you want to move your desktop around, you can do that in the second F, not the regular. This one here it won't. Well, let's have a look here. Let's get to our regular one. Well, I guess on that background, now we can. All right. So the space bar will let us move our entire document now. That's interesting. Not if I'm zoomed out. There we go. If I hit that first F, and I'm just put this back to default, now I can move this. I could only move because I was zoomed so far in, that's why. Yeah. So you can reposition your document on your window if you hit that F key. And then hit it again, you go into full screen mode. And this is how you would go into, display mode to show things like that. All right, so let's hit the F key again. We'll go back and I'm going to put that interface back because I don't like that dark interface. I like it about here. It's a little bit nicer. But I know some people like to have the bright one. This is more like, this is what Photoshop used to look like. And it just seems so bright. And then, you can change the language of your UI. Obviously, I just have English, but if you're living in another country and you have an international version of Photoshop, you will have possibly more than one language option. All right, so full screen mode. So we can change the colors here, borders and all that kind of stuff. So when I hit the little F key and I went through those different modes, you can change the color. You can go into different colors if you wanted. So, if I wanted to go full screen mode, I could set that with the light gray if I wanted, and it would just be kind of weird, but see how I set F, now it goes to the light gray, and see how we can change those colors for the different modes if that's something that maybe you want to do. So let's just go back to default. All right, so UI size, we can change the fonts, so we can make the fonts different. And notice this one says will take effect next time you start Photoshop. So, you know, doing that in here, I'll just go to medium. You're not going to see it because I'm going to have to restart Photoshop, but that will literally make the type bigger. So if you have trouble reading it, whatever, like I do, I should probably have it set to large. Actually, well, I don't know, I should just set it to large, and then if it looks really weird, I'll put it back. Okay, so here's another one that's kind of funny, is show channels in color. This is one a lot of people are not aware of. So when we are working inside of Photoshop, and let's just create a document out of this, and we look at the colors, right? We see red, green, and blue. And in fact, if you were printing this and you were sending this to a printing press, which would be our, CMYK, but which would be under image mode. Let me do it just to show you. Okay, so we go to CMYK mode. Okay, let's change it. All right, so we click on here, we see cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. But these are just showing as black and white. If I add them all together, they equal color. So how does that work? I mean, these are just black and white. Well, if I do 2 of them, you'll see the color, or 3 of them. So you have to display more than one at a time to show the color. But it doesn't show it on the mask here. So let's go here and we click on, let me just turn that on here. Grab that. Notice how it just shows in black and white. But if we go under here, this is actually the true setting. When we go under the interface and then I turn on channels in color, click OK, now we see cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So this is actually a more true value, although when you send off the printing plates to the press, they're all black and white, and then those colors go on each plate. But the reason it's not showing in color, because see how it's really hard to see where certain things are? So if we go under our preferences again, and let's go back to our interface, and we turn those channels in color off, and then we just got to click again. Notice now we can see, oh, so much easier to see. So where it's bright means there's a lot of yellow. Where it's dark means there's less yellow, because we're working with those particular colors. So, and obviously the light and dark values also affect it. But in here, we can see this, so if we look at this, actually it would be the other way around because we're working in CMYK. Sorry, let me recalibrate my brain, because we're working with additive colors. So when we're working in RGB, where it would actually be white, where there would be a very small amount of that color. And then when there's a lot of the color, because we're working with pigments here, that means the darker areas would actually be more yellow, and the lighter areas would be, yes, less yellow. Let me just demonstrate that, for example. So if I grab a brush here and I create a layer, and let's look at this in just the yellow mode, and let's grab a yellow color. So yellow, it's a light color, right? But look, let's see if this will work for me. It might not let me do this in monotone. Let me just go into CMYK for a moment, and I'm going to paint with yellow. Make sure everything is on. Let's grab a yellow color, paint with yellow, and make sure all the channels are selected. There we go, and I paint with yellow. All right, so what I'm going to do though is I'm going to take half of this yellow, and this will be interesting. I'm going to invert this. So I'm going to create Control-I, and that's going to create the opposite of yellow, which is this kind of purpley color. All right, so let's have a look at this. When we go under the colors and we hit the yellow channel, look at this. See that? When it's yellow, it's black. When it's the opposite of yellow, there's no yellow, it shows white. So this is why you don't want to use them in color in the channels, because it's so much easier to see what's going on. And now let me just go back to our regular mode that we're normally working in, which would be RGB color. Don't flatten. And now it's going to be the opposite. So if we go in here, blue should kind of show us here. If we were going to grab a color here, now let me just show you. Let's grab this. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to grab a red. So just to show you that this is indeed the opposite now. Work with a brush, and I'm going to paint red. Let's just paint red. Okay. So according to CMYK, that red would show black, but here it shows white. So we're working with light. Now we're in RGB mode, which is the opposite of CMYK. So most of the time you're not working in CMYK, you're working here with light. CMYK simulates pigment, which would be ink or paint, things like that. Whereas now we're doing light. So that means the more of that light is present, the brighter it is. So when we're in the red channel, 100% red is going to show as white. 0% red, or the opposite of red, if I hit Command I on there, is going to show as black. And I guess the opposite of that bright red was black anyway. But as you can see there, that's essentially how that works, as far as the colors. So anyway, I guess we didn't get too far in the preferences. Let me just skim through here, see if there's one or two that I think are really important, and then we're going to have a look at some of your guys' work. So I hope you're enjoying this. Is this useful? Are you guys learning anything out of this? Let me get the chat up and see what you guys are saying here. Is there a way to change the size or color of the cursor? Well, actually, yes, we can. But that's actually going to be done through cursors. And then we have different types of cursor tips. So here's our normal that we see here. And then we can go into our precise. Now the brush preview just shows where the brush is going to go. We can show a crosshair in there. We can show only a crosshair. Or brush here, the leash color, I guess, is where we're just kind of dragging. We can change that. Now, if you want to change the size of the cursor, you have to go into your system preferences. And you could do that under Mac or Windows under different system preferences. You can change the size of your cursor. However, if you're painting here and see, like now I've got a paintbrush. See how I changed that? And let's go under the preferences here. And wherever I was, interface, general, where was I? Cursors, here we go. So that's the standard cursor, there's a precise cursor, or the normal brush tip. I actually like the normal brush tip, which is that one, because that shows the extent of where you're going to be painting with your brush. But if you want to go to the precise one, you just hit the caps lock. And then the caps lock will give you a very, very precise cursor, which is right in the center of wherever you want to be painting. And that's how you get there, is caps lock will go toggle between that. So yeah, you have some options there that you can do. And let me go back to RGB mode, so it might be a little bit more, caps lock. And now it's precise, but it's still going to paint the same size brush. It's just going to show you the exact center of that. So that's good when you're cutting out and doing things like you're masking and different things like that. That could be useful. All right, so what are other questions we got here? Yes, very useful, learn a lot. Yes, very useful, great. Okay, glad you guys are enjoying some vegetables this week instead of cookies and cake. Wish you could get through more of these, maybe a part 2 on another day. Yeah, maybe if that's something you guys would be interested in. Would that be interesting to you if I do more of this later on? Let me know in the comment there. Easy to make mask selections with the black and white. Definitely, that's why we would do that. Daylight savings time. All right. So, yep. This is useful. What about camera raw preferences? Well, the camera raw preferences are in Photoshop, or we can go here. Let me show you. Filter camera raw. And when we're in here, we can also access our preferences in here by hitting this. So basically, yeah, we have the ability to change these panels, like one panel can be open or multiple panels can be open. We can change the color theme. See, that's here as well. So we have the ability to change that. Compact layout's quite useful if you're on a laptop. Watch these. See, with compact, see how it makes things a little bit smaller, enables you to see more on your screen. And I turn that compact, watch this, goes back to the regular. See that? Yep. So you have the ability to change that. And in image click, when you click there, you can change the image to view at different sizes. So that means when I want to go backwards and forwards, Lightroom style, zoom and pan, if you turn that on, it'll work the same. Legacy keyboard. So remember when they updated Camera Raw, if you want to go back to the old keyboards, you can do that. And then we've got some performance things here. So if you're having issues, you can turn off your GPU to test it. And by the way, let me get out of here. I'll show you in Photoshop. You can do that too. That's an essential preference to show you guys. So if you are in here and you're trying to like fix things, you want to go into performance, turn off the GPU is a way to test. So if you've got weird display issues, you can go in there, turn that off, see if they go away. If they don't, if they do go away, you know it's the GPU. If they don't go away, you know it's not. So then you can go into the advanced setting and we can choose to disable or open OpenCL and test some things like that. And that's how you can kind of troubleshoot and fix some issues sometimes. And then, you know, we've got our scratch discs. You know, scratch discs here are other discs attached that I want to use. I'm only using these two because this is an NVMe, is Mac 2, and this one here is an SSD. These other ones are external drives. I don't want to use those as scratch discs because they're slower, but the NVMe is definitely a good one. All right, so let's have a look and see some of the work that you guys have submitted this week, if you guys are okay with that. And really learn luminosity channels. Yeah, luminosity masks, luminosity channels are very useful. All right, so I took some screen captures just a little bit ago, and I'm going to grab these right now. As you can see here, I'm highly organized. How many of you are as bad as me when it comes to like desktop? Let me know. So it's not just me. I don't know, for some reason I always seem to just get all of these things all over my desktop. You know, no matter how much I clean it up, I just keep accumulating stuff. All right, so let's make this bigger. Let's just go full screen with that. There we go. All right, so are these new? Yes, these are new. Okay, so John William Bell, are you here? Thought this is kind of cool. I like your composite here. It looks nice. You know, I like this kind of combination of the, you know, tactile stuff and the digital. So you're kind of scanning in different textures and things like that and mixing it with the digital is kind of fun. I wouldn't mind actually doing a little bit more of this myself with inks and watercolors. Bruce says me too. He gives his friends panic attacks when they see it. All right. Part 2 might be good. All right, let's move on. This is Boba. I don't know how to say your name. He's been posting in the group for quite a while. And by the way, if you want to know where to post these, it's in our Facebook group. Bruce, do you have the link there to our Facebook group? Guys, just post in there, and then each week we're going to go through and have a look at some of the stuff. Now, he posts quite a lot. This is one of my favorite pieces that he has done. This is good for St. Patrick's Day. We got the green going on. And yeah, nice, good quality. All right, then we've got John William Bell. John William Bell. This is kind of cool. I like the just, you know, the textury, kind of grungy kind of feel. You know, good job. And moving on to Gail Edwards. Crow Nada. So Gail Edwards does a lot of these. She posts quite often too. And she does these, she uses Poser, which is 3D application to create her models. And then, you know, she does her compositing and stuff in Photoshop. But these are, you know, Poser models that she creates in 3D. And she does a beautiful job of her work. And I really like this particular one. I think it's nice. Okay. Andrew Nichols, are you in the house? Reveal yourself. Make yourself known to us. Hey, Odgear, good to see you. Good to see you, Susan and Orca Pest. Glad you could join us, John Oswell. Good to see you there, too. All right, let me see. Is Andrew saying hello? Andrew's usually here. Good to see you, Klaus. Susan, photo maker. All right, so I love the steampunk that he's done here. The mine owner, and he's got this really cool steampunk weapon. And very nicely done. Good job. I'm a fan of the style. I do like the style. So I picked this one. All right. Andrew Nichols. Is that Andrew again? Andrew, if you're not here, Andrew's going to come up in the replay and be like, oh, man, I can't believe I missed it. So he did this one last week with the lighthouse, if you guys remember. And he created the model out of it. And so he did this variation of a theme, and I kind of like this. I think this is part 3. I'm not sure what part 2 is, but I think it's kind of cool. With this lighthouse in the tree and the bridge. Cool. Nice work. Dave Fisher. Are you there, Dave Fisher? John Oswald's in the UK. It's right there. Okay. Or Andrew Nichols. Okay. All right. So I love the quality of this composite here. Have you seen the Muffin Man? And I guess here he is, the baker, and then there's a little hand here stealing some muffins or some bread. It's pretty neat. And this was a composite shoot. Great work. Very nicely done. Dave Fisher, I don't know if you were here. Somebody. All right, there we go. All right, guys. So that's it for this week. Looks like a classic museum piece. I think so. I mean, I really love what was done there. So that's it, guys. So that's been this week. I want to wish you all a happy St. Patrick's Day. And by the way, if you haven't yet, hit that like button. Do it. If you haven't yet subscribed, just hit that subscribe button. Why? What does it do? Well, it's free, and what it does is it just will help you so you don't miss any of our videos. So I upload a video every Tuesday. Just a tip or whatever. This week I showed how to open up the shadows in a photo, because when you look at photos, is one of the things I noticed. There's a certain area there, not quite the blacks, but just in the shadows, there's an area that's always too dark. It should be kind of like here, and so I figured out a cool, easy way to do that with parametric curves. How to just instantly, in a couple of seconds, you just slide everything to the side, move one slider, boom, opens it up in a more natural way than opening up the shadows. So check out that tutorial. It's there on YouTube. It's on PhotoshopCAFE as well with the written instructions. But if you hit the not the like button, if you hit the like button, it helps with the algorithm. But if you subscribe, and turn on notifications, you'll know when I upload new videos. Anyway, so thanks guys for joining me, and we'll see you next week for more. So happy St. Patrick's.